Welcome to Learning Life Content. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us grow and motivates us to bring you more fascinating and enriching stories. On the 4th of July, the very air seems to shimmer with anticipation. Sunlight glinting off 1,000 fluttering flags, the scent of fresh-cut grass mingling with distant barbecue smoke, and the low hum of excitement rising from every corner of the land. Everywhere you look, the world is awash in red, white, and blue. Banners draped from porches, ribbons tied to bicycles, and faces painted with stars and stripes, each hue vivid beneath the summer sky. Flags ripple in the warm breeze, brass bands fill the air with triumphant melodies, and families, young and old, gather along bustling streets, their laughter and chatter weaving together a tapestry of shared American identity. Children dart between legs, waving miniature flags with sticky hands, their cheeks smudged with ice cream, and their eyes alight with the wonder of a world transformed for a single magical day. Their gazes, wide and unblinking, reflect the promise of possibility, each spark in the sky mirrored in their hopeful faces. As dusk settles, a hush falls over the crowd. Suddenly, the heavens erupt in a riot of color, fireworks bursting and cascading, their thunderous echoes uniting strangers in collective awe, each explosion painting the night with hope and memory. These cherished rituals are more than mere spectacle. They are living symbols of freedom, resilience, and the enduring spirit that binds a nation across generations. Yet, beneath the jubilant celebration, a more intricate and layered story quietly unfolds, one woven with both triumph and contradiction. We commemorate July 4th, 1776, as the moment of the nation's birth, a date etched in memory and myth, celebrated in every corner of the land. We teach that on this day, America became free, yet the truth, as history so often reminds us, is rarely so simple or so swift. The past, like an old scroll, reveals complexities, promises made, struggles endured, and the slow, uneven march toward liberty. Was this truly the day independence was won, or merely the day it was bravely declared? An audacious hope cast into an uncertain future? The real story is a winding journey, of impassioned debate in crowded halls, of sacrifice on distant battlefields, and of dreams forged in the crucible of adversity. War raged, and diplomacy danced, a nation's fate balanced on the edge of hope and hardship. The 4th of July marks not a triumphant conclusion, but a bold and uncertain beginning, a promise written in ink, awaiting the test of time. The freedom so eloquently envisioned remained, for many, a distant dream, a shimmering promise on the horizon, not yet grasped. To truly understand the birth of America, we must look beyond the fireworks and festivities, peering into the quieter, lesser-known moments that built the nation's very foundation. For it is in these hidden chapters, etched in parchment, remembered in song, and honored in spirit, that the true story of American independence endures. In the sweltering summer of 1776, Philadelphia was thick with uncertainty and hope. The city's cobblestone streets echoed with whispers of revolution, while inside Independence Hall, history was being written with trembling hands. Inside those walls, delegates from 13 colonies gathered, their faces drawn with exhaustion and resolve. Philadelphia's Congress faced a daunting choice, one that would determine the fate of generations yet unborn. They weren't celebrating victory. Instead, each man knew that signing their names could mean ruin, loss of property, freedom, even life. The air was thick with fear and courage in equal measure. They were risking everything for an idea. Liberty, a word whispered in the corridors, now spoken aloud with defiance. On July 2nd, after days of heated debate and sleepless nights, the Congress voted for independence. The room was silent as the tally was counted, a quiet moment that thundered through history, formally breaking from Britain. The act was done, formally breaking from Britain, with no guarantee of success. It was a quiet vote, but it changed everything. John Adams would later write that the room was filled with solemnity, as if each man sensed the weight of the world upon his shoulders. 2 days later, on July 4th, the final text of the Declaration was approved, They approved the Declaration of Independence, a document that would echo across continents. Jefferson's words, carefully chosen and fiercely debated, explained their cause to the world. "We hold these truths to be self-evident," a phrase that would inspire revolutions far beyond America's shores. The Declaration was not the law that made them free, but the public statement that inspired a nation and sought allies. It was a beacon, not a shield. John Hancock's bold signature was an act of defiance, written large so that King George could read it without spectacles. But the signing continued for weeks, as delegates arrived and added their names, each one risking all for the cause. July 4th, the date on the document, captured the public imagination. It became the day Americans would remember. The vote on July 2nd was the act. July 4th was the announcement, a thunderclap heard around the world. The Declaration gave voice to liberty and equality, at least in words. But these were ideals, not realities. Many in the room owned slaves, and the promise of freedom was not yet for all. The ink was barely dry on the parchment when British forces prepared to crush the rebellion. The threat was immediate and overwhelming. Independence was declared, but far from secured. The colonies stood on the edge of a precipice. The fight for freedom had only just begun. The world watched, uncertain if this bold experiment would survive. John Adams, ever the visionary and passionate patriot, believed July 2nd, the day Congress bravely voted for independence, would be remembered as the great festival of American freedom. In his mind, this was the true moment of national birth, a leap into the unknown. In a heartfelt letter to his beloved Abigail, Adams poured out his conviction that future generations would mark the 2nd of July with parades, bonfires, and heartfelt celebrations. He imagined the streets alive with joy, the air thick with the sound of bells and laughter. He was certain it would be our great national holiday. Adams wrote, "It ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shoes, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, from this time forward forevermore." Games and fireworks. Yet, history had other plans. Adams was right about the celebration, but wrong about the date. July 4th, not the 2nd, would capture the nation's imagination. Why did July 4th eclipse July 2nd? The answer lies in the power of the written word. The Declaration, with its stirring language and bold ideals, was dated July 4th. It was this document, read aloud in town squares, printed in newspapers, and carried on the wind of revolution, that captured hearts and headlines. The July 2nd vote was a crucial act, but the Declaration's stirring language, dated July 4th, captured hearts and headlines. The Declaration was read aloud across the colonies, its message spreading quickly. The date at the top, July 4th, became synonymous with independence, not because of the vote, but because of the words that gave the cause its soul. Early celebrations referenced the Declaration, cementing the connection. Adams, in later years, lamented the overlooked vote. He saw how the narrative power of Jefferson's words had prevailed, shaping not just a holiday, but the very way Americans understood their own freedom. The story of independence became tied to the promise, not the procedure. July 4th became the day America chose to remember, a testament to the enduring power of words and the dreams they inspire. Declaring independence was only the beginning. The true test lay ahead as a fledgling nation braced itself for a long and bitter struggle. The ink on the Declaration had barely dried when the realities of war set in, uncertainty, fear, and hope mingling in the humid Philadelphia air. Winning independence was a grueling ordeal. Ragged lines of continental soldiers marched through mud and snow, their boots worn thin, their bellies often empty. For 7 relentless years, the war dragged on, each season bringing new hardships and heartbreak. The Revolutionary War was not a single battle, but a series of desperate stands and retreats. At Valley Forge, men shivered in makeshift tents, their resolve tested by hunger and disease. Yet, through the bleakest winters, they clung to the hope of liberty. Washington's Continental Army, outmatched and undersupplied, faced devastating losses. At times, defeat seemed certain, but the spirit of the soldiers, farmers, tradesmen, and boys, refused to break, even as they watched friends fall beside them. Through the darkness, glimmers of hope emerged. Key victories at Trenton, where Washington crossed the icy Delaware on Christmas night, and at Saratoga, where the tide began to turn, became legends of courage and cunning. These triumphs kept hope alive and brought France into the fight, transforming a colonial rebellion into an international struggle. French ships and soldiers arrived, their alliance a lifeline for the battered Americans. For every hard-won triumph, there were setbacks and sacrifices. Families were torn apart, towns burned, and the cost of freedom was paid in blood and tears. Even after the British surrender at Yorktown in 1781, the struggle was not over. British troops lingered in American cities, and uncertainty haunted the new nation. The war was effectively over, but peace was not yet secured. Diplomats worked tirelessly in distant capitals, while soldiers and citizens waited anxiously for the world to recognize their hard-fought independence. The gap between military victory and true independence was wide. The dream of 1776 remained fragile, its survival dependent on recognition from the world beyond America's shores. Only when the world acknowledged the United States would America's freedom be real. Until then, the nation's fate hung in the balance, its people bound together by sacrifice, perseverance, and the hope that their struggle would not be in vain. The true legal birth of the United States did not occur in the halls of Philadelphia, but in the gilded salons of Paris. In the aftermath of years of war, American diplomats, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and John Jay, negotiated not just for peace, but for the very legitimacy of a nation. On September 3, 1783, after months of tense negotiation, the Treaty of Paris was signed. The document did more than end a war. It marked the moment when the world's great powers recognized the United States as a sovereign nation. The British king, once determined to crush the rebellion, now addressed the United States as free, sovereign, and independent. This was no mere truce. It was a full and public recognition, witnessed by the courts of Europe and the eyes of history. The treaty's articles drew new boundaries on the map, secured vital fishing rights, and set the terms for British withdrawal. For the first time, the United States appeared on European maps as a nation among nations. Behind the grandeur, the process was fraught with intrigue. Franklin charmed the French court, Adams pressed for fair terms, and Jay insisted on direct negotiation with Britain. Their persistence paid off. America gained not just peace but respect. On November 25, 1783, Evacuation Day, the last British troops departed New York. The city's church bells rang out, and crowds filled the streets, celebrating the tangible reality of independence. September 3rd became the date the world said yes. The Treaty of Paris was the legal foundation of the new republic, the moment when America's independence became a fact, not just a hope. July 4th was the promise. September 3rd was the confirmation. The world's acceptance gave America its place among nations, and the dream of independence became a living reality. The Treaty of Paris, signed in 1783, is far more than a mere historical relic. It stands as the cornerstone of American sovereignty, a document that transformed a fledgling rebellion into a nation recognized by the world's great powers. Unlike so many treaties that fade into obscurity, this agreement was crafted to be permanent, establishing, in the most solemn terms, perpetual peace and friendship between Britain and the United States. Its clauses, meticulously negotiated, set the boundaries of a new nation and enshrined its independence in the eyes of the world. The treaty remains in force to this very day, a quiet, steadfast guarantee of America's place among nations. It is the legal bedrock upon which all subsequent American diplomacy and international relations have been built. In the 18th century, legitimacy was not simply declared. It was bestowed by the recognition of other sovereign powers, most crucially by Britain itself. Without such recognition, America's independence would have remained little more than a hopeful assertion. The treaty's acknowledgement was essential, not only for peace, but for trade, diplomacy, and the stability of the new republic. It opened the doors to commerce, alliances, and the respect of foreign courts. The Declaration of Independence, for all its poetry and inspiration, held no legal power in the courts of Europe. It was the Treaty of Paris, a bilateral binding agreement that provided the definitive proof of American independence. Through this treaty, rebellious colonies were transformed into a recognized state. The world at last was compelled to treat America as an equal, not a mere upstart. The soldiers may have won the war, but it was the diplomats, through patience, wisdom, and negotiation, who secured the peace. Their signatures ensured that the sacrifices of the revolution would not be in vain. The Treaty of Paris is, in every sense, the legal bedrock of the United States. Its words echo through centuries, a testament to the power of law, negotiation, and the enduring quest for legitimacy on the world stage. If September 3rd is America's legal birthday, why do we gather on July 4th year after year beneath a sky of fireworks and flags? What draws us to this date, to this ritual of remembrance and celebration? The answer is not found in legal documents alone, but in the human need for stories that inspire, for symbols that unite. July 4th is less a date on the calendar than a chapter in our collective imagination, a day when the promise of America feels most alive. The 4th of July marks not the end of struggle, but the birth of an idea, the audacious belief that all people are entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is a day when the words of Jefferson echo across generations, stirring hearts and challenging us to live up to their meaning. Liberty, spoken in town squares, whispered in hopes, and written in the ink of revolutionaries, became the anthem of a new nation. And the pursuit of happiness, an aspiration as vast as the continent itself, became woven into the American dream. The Declaration is poetry, not contract. It stirs the soul and dares us to imagine a more perfect union. Its words have marched with abolitionists, echoed in suffragists' rallies, and inspired generations to demand justice and equality. It proclaims that governments derive their power from the consent of the governed, a radical idea then, and a challenge still today. July 4th is a reminder that democracy is not a gift, but a responsibility. To celebrate the 4th is to reaffirm our commitment to these ideals, even as we struggle, sometimes painfully, to fulfill them. The day is both a mirror and a map, reflecting who we are and pointing toward who we hope to become. The United States was founded not on bloodlines or borders, but on a creed, a set of shared beliefs. The Declaration is its most eloquent expression, a beacon for all who seek freedom. July 4th marks the moment when colonists began to see themselves not as subjects, but as Americans. This psychological break, this leap of faith, was as important as any legal document. Congress, recognizing the power of myth and memory, enshrined the 4th as a national holiday. The date became a cornerstone of civic life, a tool for unity, a story to bind a diverse and ever-changing nation. In choosing the promise of July 4th over the precision of September 3rd, we chose hope over mere history. The 4th is the day we tell ourselves who we are, and who, together, we still strive to become. America's ongoing debate over its true founding date is not an isolated curiosity, but a window into the soul of a nation wrestling with its own story. In fact, this search for a meaningful anniversary is a universal phenomenon, one that echoes across continents and centuries. Nations everywhere choose their own milestones to mark their birth. Some select the day of revolution, others the moment of legal recognition, and still others a symbolic act that captures the imagination. These choices are not arbitrary. They reflect the unique history, struggles, and aspirations of each people, woven into the fabric of their collective memory. Consider Mexico, where the Grito de Dolores, the cry for independence, resounds each September, not the day of final victory, but the spark that ignited a revolution. The celebration is not of triumph, but of the moment hope was born, a testament to the enduring power of beginnings. In contrast, Canada's National Day commemorates the legal act of confederation, July 1st, 1867, when disparate provinces were united by law, not by war. The focus is on the signature, the handshake, the moment of official creation, an origin rooted in negotiation and consensus. India too marks its independence, not with the first call to freedom, but with the day British rule officially ended, August 15, 1947, a midnight of speeches, tears and new beginnings. The legal transfer of power is celebrated with parades, music, and the raising of a new flag, an act both solemn and jubilant. The choice of date, whether born of revolution or negotiation, reveals the character of a nation and the values it seeks to honor. Some countries cherish the memory of uprising, the spirit of defiance that set them on a new path. Others find meaning in the quiet dignity of a signed agreement. There is no single right way to remember, only the way that resonates most deeply with a people's sense of self. The date a nation chooses to celebrate reveals its priorities, the courage to rebel, the wisdom to negotiate, or the hope to begin anew. Some honor the spirit of defiance, the willingness to risk all for a dream. Others, the moment the world finally recognized their place among nations. In the end, the act of remembrance is itself an act of creation, a story told and retold, shaping how a nation sees itself and its place in the world. America's focus on July 4th, with its fireworks and parades, celebrates not just a date, but the enduring spirit of a people who chose to define themselves by ideals. The decision to be free, to prioritize the poetry of a declaration over the precision of a treaty, speaks volumes about the American character. In this, as in so much else, our choice of what to remember is a mirror, reflecting not just our past, but our hopes for the future. The act of remembrance, in the end, is a tradition as old as humanity, one that binds us together even as it sets us apart. The question of America's true birthday is not merely a matter of dates, but a window into the soul of a nation. It is a debate that echoes through our history, challenging us to consider what truly defines us as Americans, the soaring ideals we proclaim, or the hard-won legal realities we secure. Are we, as a people, shaped more by the bold declaration of July 4th, when the promise of liberty was set to paper and sent into the world, or by the sober confirmation of September 3rd, when that promise was finally recognized and made real by the world's powers? This is not a simple choice, but a reflection of the enduring tension at the core of our identity. The truth, perhaps, is that America is defined by both. We are a nation born in the space between aspiration and achievement, between the poetry of ideals and the prose of law. Our story is one of striving, of reaching for a vision that is always just beyond our grasp, yet never out of sight. The 4th of July is the day of our spirit, the moment when poets, philosophers, and revolutionaries dared to imagine a new world. It is the celebration of hope, of the audacity to declare that all men are created equal, even when reality fell far short of that dream. September 3rd, by contrast, is the day of our signature, the triumph of lawyers, diplomats, and realists who transformed rebellion into nationhood. It is the moment when the world acknowledged our existence, and the ideals of the Declaration were given the force of law. We need both, the inspiration to strive for something greater, and the foundation to endure the tests of time. Without the fire of July 4th, there would be no vision to pursue. Without the confirmation of September 3rd, that vision would remain only a dream. The story of American independence is incomplete without both the fiery promise of 1776 and the validating signature of 1783. Our nation is born of spirit and law, of dreams and deeds, and it is this duality that has always defined us. This is the true legacy of American independence, not a single day, but a living tension between what we hope to be and what we have proven ourselves to be. In that space, America continues to grow, to question, and to define itself anew for each generation. Thank you for watching Learning Life content. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us grow and motivates us to bring you more fascinating and enriching stories.